Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. Today on The Young and the Restless, Sharon tells Michael she wants to plead guilty, Lucy and Faith argue about Sharon's guilt, and Jordan heads into the streets in disguise. All products and services featured are independently chosen by editors. However, soaps.com may receive a commission on orders placed through its retail links, and the retailer may receive certain auditable data for accounting purposes. Sitting on the couch at the Abbott Manse, Claire tells Kyle how making peace with your family makes everything better. He thinks about how brutal the things that he and his parents said to each other were. Now he realizes it was all for him. She says that the memory will soften and they will move on. He's had to realize his parents were right about him. She's impressed and proud that he can admit that. They kiss. Kyle points out they have the house to themselves for the next few hours. That gives her an idea. She suggests they step into the kitchen for chocolate chip cookies. He chases her in as she giggles. They return with a plate of cookies and polish them off as they tease each other. She laughs about her ability to read people finally being used for good. He thanks her for all the good she's put into his life and kisses her again. It's hard for him to wrap his head around her tolerating him and his anger all these months. She never judged him. Claire reminds him she was raised on hatred and envy. He's a novice compared to what she's used to. When he tells her what a good person she is, she has to step away. She admits it's hard to take a compliment. Kyle says that everything about her is good. She's the essence of good, and everyone who she comes close to feels it. He's lucky to know her. As they keep kissing, they head up to his room. They slowly undress each other and climb into bed. After they have sex, he notices something is up. She says it's embarrassing. This was her first time, and she's sorry she didn't tell him before. Kyle hopes she will trust him to listen to any of her complicated feelings. Claire explains that her life was not her own for so long. All she had was Jordan, and she couldn't be herself, only her aunt's tool. Then she realized she had a family and her real life started. That's when they got to know each other and her life went from something small and cold to something warm and wonderful. She's still sad about all she lost, but so happy with what she has now. They kiss. Faith finds Lucy shivering on a park bench. She had no idea she was already back. Lucy returned the moment that she heard her father was cleared, and her grandmother was driven off the road. It was so awful to see someone as tough as Phyllis looking so terrified. She's sure it must be hard on Faith to discover that her mom was the killer all along. Faith is sure that Lucy hates them all now. Lucy could never hate her after looking up to her for so long. She doesn't know what to do with all the anger she feels. Her friend doesn't know what to say about how awful and ugly all this is. At first, Lucy thought it was all a mistake, but murder? She couldn't imagine someone doing that to her mom. It was always clear that Sharon hated them, but did she plan it all this time? Faith begs her to stop. She can't handle all of this sounding so calculated. Lucy reminds her that Sharon wanted her mom off the face of the planet and even planted evidence in her house to make Daniel look like a monster. She treated her like demon spawn for months. There's no other side to that. Sharon hated them and made them suffer. Standing to go, Faith admits she doesn't know what to believe. Lucy tells her that her mom is a monster. She can't still love her. Of course, I still love her. Faith says. Lucy thinks she's delusional. Faith knows that there's nothing she can say to make things better. But she knows her mom and knows she would never do this in her right mind. Lucy isn't swallowing the insanity defense. Phyllis warned that's what they would pull and accuses her of lying to herself about her killer mother. She did it. Lucy repeats. She took her mom and tried to take her dad too. She guesses that Sharon was nice to Faith and making her snacks every single day she was doing it. Faith is sorry, but she can't listen to this and runs off. On the Crimson Lights patio, Michael refuses to let Sharon plead guilty. He tells her not to let Phyllis get under her skin. Sharon insists that her enemy was right, but the lawyer urges her not to let her case be derailed. A judge will not look kindly on her. She's sure he's brilliant enough to keep her out of prison, but that's not what she deserves. He knows she must want to do penance, but this is not the way. She needs there to be justice in the world, and there has to be a cost for robbing Heather of seeing her daughter grow up. This is something she owes to Heather and everyone who loves her. Michael wants to call Mick in, but she insists he has nothing to do with this. She's guilty and plans to make it official as soon as possible. If he won't help her do that, she will find someone who will. He asks if she thinks her kids will applaud her for this. She insists she's no role model. The least she can do is show that she knows right from wrong. The pain will go away after a period of time, and they'll realize they are better off without her. The lawyer doesn't believe that. He believes in redemption, and spends every day trying to be a man his wife and son are proud of. He's sure they are glad to have him around. Sharon says this is different. When he reminds her that she can't even remember what she's claiming to have done, she reminds him he's already done his time. Now it's her time to do it. He can't talk her out of that. Nick joins Chance at Society to talk about Sharon's confession. He admits that something about this is not sitting right with him. She's always been upfront about her bipolar condition. This is not Sharon. He's sure she met up with Heather and something happened. But he can't imagine it was premeditated. The blackouts may be the key to the whole thing. He's spoken to her therapist, and there must have been some massive psychological break. But if there was, how is she being so rational and coherent now? Chance admits that he never saw this coming. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. When Nick tries to piece it all together, he says it's been going on for a long time. The cop is sure that her lawyer can find things, but he's not going to chase down random theories about her medications when there is a confession on the table. The Newman is sure he can't do that officially. But he fished out some of the meds she threw into the trash after she had her dosage changed. Maybe the pills or bottle could be checked. Chance thinks he's grasping at straws, but Nick asks him to help with this. Since the detective is sure he won't drop this, he offers to see what he can do. Nick gets a text from Michael and takes off. Nick joins Michael and his client on the patio. Sharon is not happy that he was called over and says there is nothing to discuss. The lawyer explains that she wants her not guilty plea rescinded, and Nick points out that means jail. His ex says this is her decision and no one gets a vote on it. Nick suggests he has something that might change her mind. She doesn't want to hear this. Nick is sure she has as strong a sense of right and wrong as anyone, and he's sure she thinks she should be punished, but he doesn't believe she knew what she was doing. They argue about her meds, and she points out that they couldn't have made her a killer. If it were the meds, why does she feel fine now? He's scared of the thought of her stuck in a jail cell. Something about this isn't right, and he can't accept that. She insists she needs to atone. Michael cocks his head when Nick explains he's having her old meds tested. In a few days they will know more, and he will back off. He begs her to wait. At the Red Door Motel, Ian is scrolling through the news and complaining that this confession hasn't netted enough negative results yet. There's a rap at the door. He opens up and demands to know who the blonde woman standing there is. It's Jordan in disguise, and he's impressed. Laughing, he tells her to enjoy buzzing around the city. She promises to find out how Sharon and her family have been suffering. They talk about how the media seems to be protecting her, while he was extensively trashed. It's not enough that she be shut out of the world. It needs to be rubbed in the face of everyone she cares about. Jordan is sure everyone knows the doe-eyed prom queen is a killer. He wants to know that this is flattening their souls. When he demands proof of the suffering, she accuses him of barking orders, and he apologizes for forgetting himself. Once she exits, he drops his smile and scowls. Faith goes to Society and sits at the bar, sniffling. Disguised in her blonde wig, Jordan arrives outside, peers in and spots her. Kyle and Claire arrive giggling, and Jordan tries to shield her face. Nick stood in his small, dimly lit kitchen, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound cutting through the silence. The bottle of pills sat in front of him on the counter, its label faded and peeling. He hadn't meant to be suspicious of Sharon, but something didn't sit right. He wasn't exactly sure when his doubt had crept in, but once it did, there was no turning back. His mind, always analytical and precise, could not ignore the nagging feeling that this was something more than it appeared. The pills were the last piece of the puzzle. Nick had always trusted Sharon. They had been friends for years, ever since their college days when they'd worked on a group project together. They were like family now, bound by shared memories and experiences. But recently, things had started to change. Sharon had been acting distant, evasive even. Her once vibrant energy had faded, replaced by a hollow version of herself. She'd been pushing pills on him in an almost casual way. A little something to help with stress, she'd said. A simple fix for the long hours he'd been working. At first, Nick had brushed it off. He was a pragmatic person, and the occasional pill didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary. After all, everyone had their coping mechanisms. But it was the way Sharon had offered them, always with a strange urgency, a look in her eyes that hinted at something more, something secretive. And the pills, there was just something about them. He didn't know how to describe it. Maybe it was the way they felt in his hand, or the subtle, almost imperceptible bitterness that lingered after swallowing them, but something about them felt off. Nick wasn't one to indulge in paranoia. He trusted his intuition, but he wasn't one to jump to conclusions without evidence. So he decided to take a step he never thought he would. He was going to have the pills tested. If they weren't what they seemed, he would need to know. Sharon wasn't the type to cause harm, was she? No, she wasn't. But this wasn't about her. This was about his health, his well-being, and the sense that he was slipping into something he didn't fully understand. The first step was finding someone who could help. He couldn't just walk into any lab. This was a delicate situation. Sharon would be suspicious if she found out. So Mick turned to his old college buddy, Evan. Evan had gone into pharmaceutical research and had been working in a lab for the past 5 years. He wasn't exactly the type to ask for favors, but Nick knew he could count on him. After a couple of texts and a brief phone call, Nick arranged to meet Evan at a local coffee shop, the kind with the dim lighting and comfortable booths where they used to discuss everything from philosophy to life after graduation. Evan was already sitting when Nick arrived, his laptop open and a cup of coffee in hand. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of curiosity, maybe, or concern, that made Nick feel the weight of the moment. "Hey man," Nick said, sliding into the seat across from Evan. "Thanks for meeting me." Evan gave him a half smile, his fingers idly tapping on the side of his coffee cup. "No problem." "What's going on? You sounded serious on the phone." Nick glanced around before pulling the small bottle of pills from his jacket pocket. He placed it on the table between them, its white cap reflecting the overhead light. Evan raised an eyebrow, studying the bottle. "What's this?" "I need you to test these," Nick said, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "I think there's something wrong with them. They're not just painkillers or whatever Sharon said they were." Evan's eyes narrowed as he reached for the bottle. He twisted it in his hands, inspecting the label. "Sharon gave you these?" he asked, his tone skeptical. "Yeah," Nick replied. "She's been giving me a few here and there. I didn't think much of it at first, but, well, now I'm not so sure. She's been acting weird lately, and the pills." He trailed off, trying to find the right words. "I don't know, man. Something's off." Evan looked at him for a long moment before nodding. "All right, I'll get these tested. But you have to understand, this isn't something I can just do on a whim. I'll need a few days to run the tests, and I can't promise I'll find anything." Nick wasn't expecting miracles, but he needed the peace of mind. He just needed to know the truth. Whatever it was. "I don't care how long it takes. Just let me know." Over the next few days, Nick tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting back to the pills. He checked his phone incessantly, waiting for Evan's call. Sharon had been texting him, asking how he was doing, telling him to take the pills if he felt stressed. She seemed so casual about it all, but Nick couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more than she was letting on. Maybe even that she was hiding something. Finally, on the third day, Nick got the call. It wasn't Evan's usual cheerful tone that greeted him, but a more serious one that made Nick's stomach tighten with unease. "Nick," Evan said, his voice low, "I ran the tests. You were right to be suspicious. They're not what they seem," Evan said slowly. "There's a mix of sedatives and something else, something that isn't approved for human consumption. I'm still trying to pinpoint it, but it's dangerous. It's meant to mess with the brain's chemistry, to make the user more suggestible. I don't know why Sharon would be giving you these, but you need to stop taking them immediately." Nick's mind raced, his pulse quickening. "What does this mean, Evan? Why would Sharon do this?" "I don't know," Evan replied, his voice grave. "But I'm going to keep investigating. Don't confront her yet. This is bigger than you think." Nick hung up, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. What had Sharon gotten him into? What had she been involved in? And why? The answer, he realized, was something he wasn't yet ready to face. But he would. He had to. For now, he needed to stay calm, keep his distance, and let the truth unfold.